This is Robert Capuccio. Welcome to the Self-Help Antidote, a weekly dose of reason, perspective, and insight, where we challenge conventional thinking and explore authentic strategies and insights around personal transformation. Our commitment to you is to bring you some of the world's leading experts in the domains of fitness, wellness, coaching, and behavior change, separating fact from fallacy.
Okay, so one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is kind of a confusing subject. It's been said that empathy sometimes is a bad thing and it interferes with progress in a coaching situation. So I don't think that empathy is the problem. I think there's a lot of confusion. And the confusion is around the difference between empathy and sympathy. A lot of times we talk about things and we put a value like this is good, this is bad, without truly defining what exactly do we mean when we use that word. So I want to explore the definition, the importance, and the application of empathy in not only coaching, but in life as an essential prerequisite for success with others. And as I've said many times in this podcast, success with others, because so many things in our lives are in fact a collaborative effort and have so many variables and require so many people collaborating, success with others is equated with success in life. And if we don't have people skills, we're going to struggle. So let's talk about empathy because it's one of the most critical qualities, specifically in coaching. Let's frame it there to start. And it's one of the most critical qualities that a coach can possess. And the reason because empathy is what creates an emotional bridge between the coach and the client, facilitating understanding, trust, and a deeper connection. However, empathy has to be applied carefully, especially when we're in the context of coaching, where maintaining both connection as well as our own objectivity in the coaching seat is essential for creating positive outcomes. I think this is one of the areas where people get confused. If we're too empathetic, we're not directive enough. First of all, the job of a coach is not to be directive. That's more of the job of a teacher. That's more of the job of a mentor. Coaches guide. They don't necessarily direct. And I think one of the things that people confuse empathy for is sympathy. But the distinction between the two of them can significantly impact how effective a coach is in helping a client to navigate challenges. So as a start, why don't we define empathy? I define empathy as the ability to imaginatively project yourself into the thoughts and the feelings of another person. Empathy is what allows us to understand and share in the emotional experiences of others without necessarily becoming so emotionally intertwined that we lose all objectivity. Empathy requires the coach, me, you, to be fully present with the client, not necessarily just understanding the words that they're utilizing, but in essence, being able to feel the underlying emotions that drive them. Now, having said that, there needs to be a key distinction. Empathy is about feeling with someone, whilst sympathy is about feeling for someone. When you empathize, you stay connected to the client's experience while keeping enough psychological distance that you're able to offer insight or guidance. Now, sympathy, on the other hand, can shift the focus from the client to your own feelings, which is at the very least, less than helpful in a coaching context. And I'm going to go a step further, say it's less than helpful in most relationship dynamics. So let's talk a little bit about the importance of empathy in coaching. And empathy is essential in coaching because it fosters trust. It fosters openness. It allows clients to feel understood and supported because clients are more likely to share vulnerable aspects of their lives when they feel that their coach truly understands their emotional world. They're willing to understand it. They hold that space for it, and they actually are stepping into the client's reality to the point where they truly have an understanding of what it's like to be them in that moment, or in relation to the context of the conversation. And this level of trust is what creates the foundation for deeper, more meaningful work, because it allows the coach and the client to explore complex emotions and the challenges that the client is facing in a space that's safe. So Brené Brown suggests that empathy plays a critical role in building resilience as well as connection. Brown's work shows that people who feel deeply understood are more likely to overcome shame and self-doubt, which are two common barriers to personal growth and goal achievement. And this becomes especially relevant in a coaching relationship where the process often involves navigating through different emotions, contexts, and mindsets. So there was a study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, which also supports the idea that empathy builds strong connections. Researchers Baston and Shaw back in 1991 demonstrated that empathetic understanding significantly improves interpersonal relationships. At the same time, it fosters cooperative, trusting behavior. And this type of understanding extends to the coaching relationship, where the quality of the emotional connection between the coach and the client is very often the key determinant of success. I know I've discussed that on previous episodes. And the difference between empathy and sympathy, as we've mentioned earlier in our podcast, is that empathy focuses on the other person. Sympathy shifts the attention to you and how the other person's situation and emotional state makes you feel. Now, this subtle difference has significant implications for the coaching dynamic and the success of the coaching relationship, or lack thereof. So let's take a look at sympathy. Sympathy often involves pity or feeling sorry for someone. For instance, let's say a client is expressing frustration or sadness. Responding to the client with sympathy might look like, "Oh, that must be so hard for you. I feel so terrible that you're going through this." Now, while that sounds well-meaning, don't get it wrong. This type of response can be devastatingly counterproductive. Sympathy, again, focuses away from the client and toward your own feelings. If you look at that sentence, it was about how you felt and how terrible it was for you. This must be so hard for you, you poor thing. That positions the client as someone who is to be pitied, which potentially undermines their sense of agency as well as empowerment. In a coaching scenario, sympathy can inadvertently create a power imbalance where the coach becomes the rescuer and the client becomes the victim. And I have seen this happen. I have seen coaches lean into this model, this narrative, and create discord and immobilize client after client, while the whole time on the surface, it seems very caring, but the dynamic is disempowering and it does very little to foster personal growth and problem solving. So let's take a look at empathy. In contrast, empathy looks a little bit more like this. You're judging multiple high priority challenges, all tied to things and people that really matter to you. That kind of pressure is leaving you feeling anxious, overwhelmed, and uncertain about how to manage everything. It sounds incredibly tough. Can you share some more of your thoughts about what's been happening? That's empathy. Notice that empathy keeps the focus on the client's experience and encourages them to explore their own emotions and thoughts more deeply. By offering empathy, you as a coach remain connected to the client's emotional world without necessarily taking on the client's emotional burden. And again, too much empathy that results in what's called emotional contagion, when you become overwhelmed and overcome by what the client is feeling. That's just as damaging as sympathy, because it creates the same end effect. You become so over-indexed on what you're feeling and how their situation is impacting you. And what the research has shown by Rolnick and Mill of the pioneers behind motivational interviewing is when sympathy or even empathy at an extreme degree becomes so intense, our probability of engaging in compassionate acts decrease. Now, compassion is not just about caring. It's about caring to the point where you are moved to take action in order to alleviate the suffering of another human being. So anyway, here's a key point that I want you to take away from this. Empathy is what focuses your attention on the other person and their experience, while sympathy focuses your attention on how that person's situation makes you feel. In coaching, empathy builds rapport, it builds trust and understanding, while sympathy, even if it's well-meaning, sometimes it's not. That's a whole different story though. But even when it's well-meaning, it can create distance. Or at the very least, and this is not a small matter, it can diminish the client's sense of agency. So when you take a look at the application of empathy in coaching, it's not just about recognizing and acknowledging a client's feelings. It's about using that understanding to facilitate deeper insights, leading to compassion, which is demonstrated through constructive action. And here are some ways that empathy can be applied within the coaching relationship. First, active listening and reflective emotions. So empathy starts with truly listening to your client. If you're not willing or able to truly listen, you can't be said to be empathetic. Now, active listening involves not just hearing the words that your client is saying, but paying intentional attention to their tone, their body language, and the emotional undercurrents. Reflecting back on the emotions that you're perceiving helps your client to feel understood. For example, if a client says, I just feel like I'm constantly failing at my job, an empathetic response would be, it sounds like you're feeling really overwhelmed and discouraged. This reflection validates the client's emotional experience and also equally, at the very least equally important, it opens the door for them to explore those feelings further. Number two, asking open-ended questions. Empathy also involves asking open-ended questions that encourage clients to explore their own emotional state more deeply. For instance, rather than asking, do you feel sad about this? You could ask, how does this situation make you feel? Because open-ended questions avoid making assumptions and allow the client to describe their emotion in their own words, deepening the connection and understanding, not just between the coach and the client, but between the client and themselves. Number three is about holding space without judgment. A critical part of empathy is holding space for the client without judging them or without giving them the impression that they're being judged. When clients are grappling with difficult emotions like shame, guilt, or anger, the coach's ability to create a non-judgmental, safe environment is vital. I mean, to say the very least, obviously. And when a coach can empathize with the client's struggles without offering premature solutions or advice, it gives the client the freedom to explore their feelings more fully and come to their own conclusions, which is the very essence of the spirit of coaching. For example, if a client is expressing frustration or anger about a personal relationship, instead of immediately suggesting ways to resolve the conflict, which is more of mentoring or teaching, the coach might say in this situation, it's understandable that you're feeling exasperated. Let's explore a little bit more of what's behind that frustration. This approach encourages the client to reflect on their own emotions and actions before rushing in to fix the problem. And finally, number four, balancing empathy with objectivity. While empathy is crucial, it's also important for the coach to remain objective. Over-identifying, like we talked about just a few moments ago, with the client's emotions can cloud judgment, and it hinders the coach's ability to guide the client effectively. As a coach, we have to remain a step removed emotionally so that we're able to offer clear, unbiased insights and support. Now, there is no such thing as offering a completely unbiased insight. If you are invested in something, you are committed to coaching, you care about someone or something, you are biased. But when I say unbiased, I'm about being self-aware that we're operating off of biases and paying attention to when they arise, catching those biases and releasing them from that coaching interaction. So it doesn't mean the absence of bias. What I'm talking about when I say unbiased insights is being honest and self-aware, paying attention and being attuned to when they arise, catching them in the moment and being able to release them and move forward. So getting back to empathy, it helps the clients understand, or it helps the coach rather understand the client's emotional world, but it's the coach's objectivity that allows that client to be on the receiving end of practical, solution-focused guidance, not meaning that we're presenting the solution, but we're utilizing reflections, affirmations, summarizations, and the right question to guide them towards arriving at their own solution to their challenges that they're facing. If a coach becomes too emotionally invested, they're going to risk losing perspective. And that can limit the coach's ability to facilitate real change. So let me give you an example of this. Imagine you're coaching a client, Sarah, who's overwhelmed at work and feels like she's failing both as an employee and as a mom. A sympathetic response might be, "Oh, that sounds awful. I'm so sorry you have to deal with this." And whilst that response is in fact caring, I'm assuming it is, it shifts the focus once again to the coach's feelings about Sarah's situation, where take a look at an empathetic response on the other hand. It would go something like this. It sounds like you're feeling like you're being pulled in a lot of directions right now, Sarah, and it's weighing you down. Can you tell me a bit more about what's been happening at work and at home? What did you just notice there? This approach keeps the focus on Sarah. And because the focus is on Sarah and it's curious, it encourages her to dive deeper into her own experience. Empathy validates her feelings while also at the same time helping her to explore them in more depth, leading to greater self-awareness and ultimately positioning her to be more effective at problem solving. So empathy is a powerful tool in coaching when we are looking to foster trust, understanding, and a sense of deeper client engagement. And if we can distinguish empathy from sympathy, coaches can maintain a balance between our emotional connection and objectivity, ensuring that we're fully present for clients without becoming emotionally overwhelmed ourselves. Empathy focuses our attention on the client, which creates a dynamic that allows them to explore their own feelings and thoughts in a supportive, non-judgmental space where sympathy, as we've talked about before, it can easily shift the focus to the coach's emotions. And this creates an unproductive dynamic that hinders the client's growth. So, while empathy is the key to building meaningful, transformative coaching relationships, sympathy is an impediment. And if we practice things like active listening, reflective emotions, we ask open-ended questions, and we remain objective. As coaches, empathy is a critical ingredient in creating the kind of rapport that leads to lasting change and personal growth for all of our clients. We're going to get a little bit more into rapport in future podcasts because I think rapport is also misunderstood grossly. And when you use it effectively, it is an absolute superpower in fostering deep, effective relationships with people. And whether you're in a leadership position, whether you are in sales or coaching, or you're in a relationship with someone that matters to you, rapport is the key to the lock on success and fruitfulness. If that's even a word. Is fruitfulness? We'll go with it. It's a word. And fruitfulness within that relationship dynamic. Hope you got a couple of key takeaways. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you in a week.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Visit us at theselfhelpantidote.com to share your feedback, insights, and recommendations on what topics you'd like us to explore in the future.